Today's guest is Senping Zhang. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good also. So, Senping, today we're going to talk all about your whole journey through university at UTSC. You and I know each other because you've ended up working in my office, the former Department of Student Life. We are now the Office of Student Experience and Wellbeing. And you've had a couple different roles there, as well as we've worked together on Residence Council. And one thing I wanted to, before we get kind of into your academic journey, you and I were just talking about this. When we first met, I knew you as Francis, and I think there's an interesting story behind that. And so, can you explain how you went from Francis back to Senping?
Yeah, so that was a really funny story. Back in the day, that I was in a summer camp back in 2015 in Canada. But that time, so pretty much the ESL teacher back in that class was saying that I'm going to give everyone like an English name. And then I don't know what to choose, so I pretty much use the first letter of my first name to get this word. He gave me a couple. One is called Stefan, one is called Steve, and then the third one he gave me like Francis because he was kind of running out of names as well. So he was like, "Okay, I'm gonna give you this name because I don't know what to call. So this name with your first letter of your first name at the very end of this word. So see which one you like." I was like, okay, that one looks much better. So I chose Francis. But then after a while, I realized that when people call me Francis and then they really don't know who I am actually, like who I actually am. When I sort of mention my real name in those documentaries or like government documents, and they were like, "Oh, I don't know who this person is." I was like, "Okay, let's just call me by my real name. It's simple."
Yeah, certainly. It's not like it's people need to learn how to pronounce people's names. I mean, so I'm glad that you we're all calling you by the name you prefer to go by now. That's great. So let's go back to your university experience. How did it start? How did you end up picking UTSC when you first were deciding where to go to university?
I actually applied for St. George. This is also a funny story because I applied on OCAD, I suppose. OCAD 101, that was like the high school system. And then I applied for St. George, but they sent me to UTSC.
Okay, so it was
Yeah.
not your expected school of choice.
Yeah, well, I firstly chose St. George, but when I see the admission offer, it says University of Toronto Scarborough. I was like, whoa, that's really fascinating.
Right. So and obviously you ended up picking here. And so what was some of the reasons? What did you end up finding out about Scarborough? What made you pick UTSC?
I actually do have some friends studied at St. George, and then one thing I really do not like St. George is I'm super lost in that campus. It's like I cannot even find the real building for classes because it's so big.
Right.
And then the way that they construct St. George is residence school. So you literally don't know where is north, where is south, where is east. It's so confusing. Yeah, that's one reason. Second reason is that the class size of St. George is really big. Look at the convocation hall. Like that's where pretty much everyone had their first year class in there. So it's really hard to have in-person interactions with a professor compared to the class size in Scarborough. So that's the second reason that why I pick UTSC. Third reason is because of the smaller campus. So it's really good to sort of having this community setting that you know everyone instead of not knowing everyone downtown.
Yeah. I mean, size wise, like downtown, something like 60,000. I think it's more than that. And we're about 13 or 14. So yeah, you're going to run into more people walking around campus.
Yeah, and also we do have good landscape. So
Yeah, no, we do. The walk down to the valley. That's a
yeah,
great, pleasant little way to just relax, and
500 meters.
yeah, it's a long way. So it sounds like getting accepted to the Scarborough campus really turned out much better for you as you ended up finding out that that would be a preferred campus.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, so let's talk about then the academic side of things. When you got into UTSC, what was the program that you were planning on studying?
I was actually planning to study bio at the very first place, and then I realized environmental science is actually an interesting subject, so I continued to stay in that subject and then continue going with the specialist program of environmental geoscience. And it turns out really interesting. It really helped me find out the challenging environmental issues nowadays that we're facing, and it gave me like a broader view of what environmental scientists are, like what they are doing usually.
Yeah, that is very pertinent to things going on in the world today. So I'm certain that, you'll end up be able to find a job with that kind of skill set. So in taking that program, did you end up taking a lot of courses that were just kind of in that one field, or did you take extra courses to see if other programs were of interest to you, or what was that journey like?
I actually tried a different variety of different like courses in my first year, but it doesn't really interest me that much. One thing that I sort of consult with my program advisor is that because my specialist program is 15.5 credits, so I still need like 4.5 credits to have 20 credits fulfilled. So I was sort of debating with between this natural environmental science, like natural is a different program. It's like a minor in environmental science, but it's like a breakdown of more literature wide, like more towards to the literature of environmental science, and
Mm-hmm.
like a Chinese English translation. So I was sort of debating between those two with my program supervisor. What the suggestion that my supervisor gave was that because China is like a developing country and it's really developing fast nowadays, so having like both language advantage will make you through those sort of bypass when you are having like conferences or
Mm-hmm.
conversations with people. So that's the reason why I ended up at a minor of Chinese English translation on my program credits. So currently I do have the specialist program of environmental geoscience and the minor of English and Chinese translation.
Okay, yeah, being bilingual, huge advantage out in the job market for sure. So let's talk about then your involvement, extracurriculars, things like that. So how did you first get involved in things beyond just classes?
Classes was actually making me feel bored at the first place because like AAC 223 was so big.
Right.
My first class was in there and it was chemistry. I still remember it was so big, and then like the professor cannot even like look at everyone, just asking you questions. So I was like, wow, that's such a large class. How am I supposed to get to know everyone? And before that, the first year experience program really sort of get me involved on campus because my mentor back that day was Faria. And Faria was the mentor of someone else that we actually know. So we sort of like start talking. And then I find out the first year social are so good. So I start
Hmm.
going the social pretty much per month. And then I get involved with the leadership program. And then I realized, wow, there's still a lot of things to explore outside the class, like outside the academic field. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And it's really good um, for first year students backing, like from a personal perspective, is because it really sort of distracts you from those daily pressures when you first get into university.
Mm.
So it's like a really good balance between academic and campus life. So that's why I started
Oh, that's
and how
good.
I started. Yeah.
And I guess, depending on what your class schedule is like, if you have big gaps between classes during the day and you're on campus, you can only spend so much of that time studying. So you might as well go and see what some of the activities on campus are.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well because for my first year classes, they're all in the morning, so I have pretty much afternoon empty, and then like pretty much most of the programmings were available from like either 2 to 4 or like 5 to 7. So it's really good. It is really good to take advantage of that.
Hmm. So I wonder, was it clubs initially, or were you working for one of the programs on campus? Because you're one of those people who I can't pinpoint when we met. I just know we've known each other for some time now, and so I don't remember what the first thing you were doing was that we would have interacted in. So what did you start with?
I started with the first year experience program, and then I went to the leadership program.
Oh,
And
so you were, oh,
then
sorry. You mean
after,
you were a mentor for both of those?
yeah, so before I was a mentee, and then I have a mentor.
Right,
And then
right.
after that, being a mentee for the first year, I was a mentor for my second year. But before I was the mentor, I was in the leadership program. So it's a mentee, leadership program, mentor, and then marketing assistant.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's the journey. Like I said, you're just one of those people who's been around our office so much that I couldn't pinpoint where you had started. Um, let's talk about the leadership program for a bit because I had interviewed Norm, who runs it now, as he was the second interview or third interview we did when we started this podcast, and he got to talk about what it's like now and kind of his journey in that role. But as someone who took the program or took many of the courses, what did you get out of those? What was the value in it, you think?
So back in the day when I was taking the leadership program, it really it's like leadership first year, and
Yeah.
then it really sort of navigate you through those questions that in your mind is like why am I here? Why am I here at my first year at UTSC? What's the goal of me being here for the next 4 years? Or maybe what's the goal of myself being here for the first year? What am I gonna do? What do I need to achieve in
Mm-hmm.
my first year? Those are those questions that commonly being asked during those leadership workshops, and it really gives us like a sense of like navigation of what we're gonna do in our first year. So it really clear our goals as a first year student, and then it really sort of motivate us to work hard in daily life to get our first year sort of done,
Yeah. Yeah.
that kind of feeling.
Oh, that.
And then it really also a good opportunity to socialize during workshops because you have different people from different programs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also a chance to get to know all the staff under Office of Student Experience and Wellbeing.
Yeah, yeah, and I suppose like that's one of the great ways to find people from other programs because so many of the people you're going to meet in your classes are probably in a program similar to yours. So a great way to meet other people is to, if not clubs, do something like the leadership workshops. That's a great idea. Now, so then you were working for our office as the marketing assistant. I haven't had anyone on here who's done anything like that. So let's talk about what being a marketing assistant on campus is like. So you get paid to work on campus. Great. It's part of the work study program, or if not, it was an honorarium position. So what was that like for you? What kind of stuff were you working on?
So I started working as one of the student ambassador at the booth. So pretty much handing out the flyers and then those cards to students to sort of telling them what exactly happening today or this week on campus.
So you
So
got to
telling them
wear
the information.
and you got to wear our purple
Purple shirt.
shirts. That's right.
Yeah, so that purple shirt was so nice. Yeah, so giving out those flyers, telling students what exactly happening today, and then we sort of update our schedule as well. So it's like we give up-to-date information to students, telling them what programs are happening today or now, or when the time or the time that we're giving out flyers. And then I started doing project management, sort of this office administrations back in the office for the second semester during 2018-2019 academic year. But during that time, it's more likely it's like half split is between office duties and then on-campus involvement with the students. Like you go to places or go to socials or events to take photos and then talk with students about or checking with students to see how their life have been going so far for the like just like a random chat or like a checking chat or like just student like talking. And then you can gather a lot of experience from those students and then a lot of opinions from students to see that what you can do to improve the marketing strategy for the next time. That's mainly what I was doing for the second semester. And then after that, I get involved with the first year team. So the first year experience program and the first year learning community. So that one is more towards to campus involvements. It's really make sure that all the socials are running well, everyone is on schedule, and then all the cafes, first year cafes and first year workshops are going good.
Okay, so quite a variety there. And then last summer, I know one of the advantages of being involved in, having people, I think, kind of know you because you've been involved is somebody approached you. I think it was Nicole from Residence to indicate that maybe you should apply to become the Residence Council president. And you did. And you ended up becoming the Res Council president last year. So that must have been a shift because you had to move into residence and run programming all year for people who are in residence, which is, I'm sure, quite a bit different because you've got a different community who's on campus all the time between classes, and when they go back home, they only have to walk a few minutes to where their residence room is. So what was the experience like working in residence? And I know that kind of led to other experiences for you where you got to help out on the move-in day logistics team.
Yeah, so that was really different experience. Is because from the experience that I sort of get from the Office of Student Experience and Wellbeing is that you just hold those events on campus and students just come and go, and you don't really get a chance to talk to them in person if they're not going to the event for the second time. But the residence setting is really community based, so pretty much you see those students all the time when you live on res as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really good opportunity to sort of kind of get them connected to the campus from like a residence setting, is because some students really just stay in their rooms pretty much the whole time. But your job is just to get them involved on campus, sort of helping them balancing out those stress from studies. So that's like a goal that that's like one of the goals that I've been working since when I was the president. And that went really well is because we try different like marketing strategies on campus, especially on residence, to sort of get students out. We collaborate with all the RAs, with all the refs, and then it turned really well. Second thing to really mention, to really glad to mention, is that when you help students moving on during the moving day, that you show yourself to let them know that you are the president for the residence council, so they automatically know who you are, and when they need help, they will come to you. That's like an advantage to take on. And then also when you sort of doing those programmings on campus, you really know what students like during the residence orientation. So it's sort of tailored my programming to those students who live on campus. It's because you already know them since the first day of orientation, right? So you know what they want or what they need outside their academic study when they live on res.
Yeah. So what were some of the things the Res Council ended up doing this year? I think you had a team of about 5 that was working on programs this year.
Yeah, we ended up having like 5 people, including myself, this year, and then we didn't have really large programmings this year because we don't want to sort of giving students too much information on those kind of programming. So we do have we have a lot of mini events per month. So it's really, so the advantage of having mini programmings is that when students are really do not have time, but they want to sort of like relax themselves, it's really good for them to just drop by and then do the events. Second is that because we have so many mini events but do not have large events, so students can continually just know everyone on residence and then getting involved and telling other people, oh, they have an event another day too. And then it's not even far from today. Like this is what I get from last time. They have an event coming up. So it's like really spreading the word around on campus, especially on residence setting. Yeah, that's really, that's like a strategy that we have been doing this year, and it turns really good.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good strategy. Something we talk about all the time, and we were talking about it even today. My staff team was the fear of over programming, or not even the fear, the real issue of over programming, because sometimes we can just offer too many big things on campus. And, students have a lot of priorities, right? Like you've got your academics. That's one thing you're worried about. Maybe you have a part-time job, and then maybe you've got family you've got to worry about, and you want to hang out with your friends, and you have a partner you want to spend time with. And there's only so many things outside of classes, and say you're involved in one club, there's only so many other things you can participate in. So offering the variety of programming where there's small drop-in type things that people can attend is super valuable, because it's something that maybe they don't always have access to on campus. So good work for offering that type of programming for students. And so at the end of the year, you had a really probably unique experience as being someone in residence who, middle of March, COVID-19 really began to affect the university, and we had to move all classes online. And then I know at some point you had to move out of residence. So how was that for you? I mean, I think you were in some ways lucky. Your family doesn't live too far away from the university, so it was easier to get home for you. But I'm sure there were other students in residence who it was, they had a difficult task of figuring out where they were going to be living and the short term.
Yeah, a lot of students actually showed this kind of worry during the time that the email was sent from the Shore office to students saying that everyone has to move out. Is because the population on residence is quite, concentrated.
Yeah, and I should point out that that's why people had to leave residence. It was for the safety of people. We didn't want too many people in a small area. That's bad news and would keep the spread of COVID-19. We wanted to put a stop to that.
Yeah, so a lot of students had struggles of ordering, flights tickets, and then that's like one of the things that worried them pretty, like for most of them. They were like, oh, where am I supposed to go? But for domestic students who, living in another province or like me, not really far from university. So for those students, they move out like quite quickly. But for international students, they were so worried. They were like, where am I supposed to go? And then what am I going to do with this? So it's really hard to it's actually really hard to make comments here to say how those students feel during that time. But there's those certain level of worry in students as well. Like students keep thinking that every day. And then like what you can do is just telling them, like sometimes during like chat, you just tell them like, calm down. It's like, we know is the situation is like this, but just follow the procedures, frequently consult the office, and then we're good.
Yeah, and I think for students who weren't able to get home, what we did was just spread them out a little farther in residence, and they could stay if they needed to. But we were encouraging people who could get home to go home, because no one knew how long the isolation was going to be. So it worked out okay. We were able to get people spread out enough who stayed in residence that everybody there was safe. So that's good. So you were very close to graduating. As you said to me right before we started here, one more credit, just one final class, and then you're going to be done. And so what do you think you're going to end up trying to do? Are you going to go into more education, or are you going to start looking for work? What's it going to be like for you when you're done?
So at this moment, I would say try to focus on the last credit and then just get it done. I have been going through a lot of resources, either environmental science related or student affairs related. So pretty much, I would say after I finish that half credit, I would directly go to work. But I would be really open for everything available at this point, because it's like at this point I know I have interests in environmental science related topics, but I don't want to do too much education. I want to do more like field work. That's pretty much the essence of being an environmental scientist. So yeah, but no specific jobs or like job related work sort of targeted by me, but I'd say I'm pretty much open for everything.
Okay, yeah, and you mentioned student affairs, which is so fascinating, because for people who aren't familiar with what that really means, that's kind of what I do. I work in student affairs, and so that would mean working at a university in a student facing support role, working with clubs or with first year students, or international advising or academic advising. These things are all what we would call student affairs. And it's good to hear that you have an interest in that. And I have to ask, because I'm sure it'll be similar to what I experienced and what so many other people who end up in student affairs experienced. Did you have any idea 4 years ago that that would be something you'd be interested in?
No.
Yeah, that's what happens, right? It's something you have to just kind of fall into. Somewhere along the line of getting involved in university, you realize that there's people that get paid to run all that stuff that you're doing for fun or to build extra skills. And now one day you could go work in that field doing that kind of job. So hopefully, if that's a path you pick, hopefully there's a good spot for you early on. So now you are back home because, as we said, when COVID-19 sort of showed up and caused some problems for us, you had to move out of residence. So you're back home, which is different than being in residence all day where you can just walk to campus and you've got friends all around you in other rooms. So what's the COVID-19 isolation experience been like for you? It's been a little different for everyone. Are you finding that you've got old skills that you're picking up again or old hobbies that you're getting back into?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I've been looking for Mandarin novels that recently because I've been using English for such a long time and I sort of lost my Mandarin skills somehow.
So you got to practice.
So that's like, I have got to practice. Same with my Cantonese. So I have to start talking with my family again. My grandma was like, how couldn't you not understand what I'm saying? I was like, I have been a long time not using it, so don't blame me. Yeah. So that's like a new thing to work with. And then, sort of picking up those unfinished Mandarin novels that I've been doing long term ago. I have to start over from the beginning because I pretty much forgot what was in the story. And I'm also working on some of the gardenings recently, but it doesn't turn it out really well. So flowers all died, not watering on time. So that's
sounds
a
like
second
you're
thing to work on.
A little rusty on that as well.
Yeah, it's like not not good at gardening at all.
Well, practice.
It's like when I'm doing it, my mom was like literally chasing behind me saying that you have to do this, you have to do that. I was like, okay. And then the second day you just see all the flowers like fading and then just dying in the soil.
Sounds like you're blaming your mom.
Yeah, I was like, what did I exactly learn from soil science? I remember this is the theoretically correct way to plant the plants.
Oh yeah, so you actually have an academic background to back up your gardening abilities.
Yeah, and then I tried exactly what is said on the textbook, and it didn't ended up well. And then I remember one thing that my supervisor mentioned is that everything in the textbook is perfect, but in reality, it's not.
Well, there you go. So I'm glad you got a realistic education as well at UTSC. So I'm glad that you've picked up gardening. It's not necessarily a hobby of mine, but everybody's got different hobbies, right? So have you finished any of the books that you started?
I finished the one of the novel called Nirvana in Fire.
Okay.
And then I finished another one. It's called The Untamed. Like I finished those two. I'm actually reading a new one.
Oh, what's the new one about?
The new one is about a story between a general and an emperor.
Well, hopefully I can find an English translation because that sounds very interesting to me. But I think I would struggle reading a Mandarin book because I don't.
It's all Asian like style story, so it's really you have to sort of understand what those feudal system works at the same time as well. So yeah, but it's a really interesting story.
I took one course in university, modern East Asian history. So I don't know if that would help at all, but it's something that I would be interested in. But again, I'd have to find a translation because my Mandarin's worse than yours.
Have something to work on, eh?
Yeah, definitely. That's something I can continue to work on during quarantine is practice my Mandarin. So the one last question I have for you is, having had all these variety of experiences you've had, like I think it seems that it's you kind of agreed that those things are what led you to have an interest in working in student affairs. But if you don't go into student affairs and if you do something on the environmental sciences side, do you think that some of the things you learned while being involved in all these extracurriculars and all the jobs you had on campus, do you think that will help you in a future career?
Yeah, definitely. Like one of the things that I learned in marketing field is that working with the office is that project management, right? So that's pretty
Mm-hmm.
much what environmental scientists do when they are in the field. So, for example, if they are making a well, they need to sort of figure out the budget, figure out who are gonna be like here to drill a well for you, and then figure out how you're gonna put that well in, and then figure out the water level or whatsoever. That's literally it's really helpful when you have those project management skills. It's because you know what you are doing in the field.
I never would have made that connection, but that's a really interesting point. How some of those skills translate over fields into like almost exactly. I mean, I'm sure it's you're doing project management for marketing, but it's the same project management skill that you need. So
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
and we actually drilled a well at Middle Ash, I think last year.
Oh, oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
So if you go to see, there were like two wells at the top of the hill near the house, and one was like down the house near the riverbank.
So that's like you got real hands-on experience doing some of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, we were doing sedimentary logs in the field, and then like we were just calculating the water levels.
All right. So that's it's basically like almost like a field. Well, it is a field experiment. You really get to actually do the thing you're studying. I'm sure
Yeah,
that will look good whenever you're looking at employers in that field down the line. But first, you
yeah,
got
it's a
to,
really good hands-on experience.
yeah. But first, you got to finish that one course
Yeah,
and
one half credit,
half
almost
credit,
there.
almost there. Are you doing it right now?
No, I'm doing it in the fall.
Okay. So you're gonna have a lot of free time in the fall, I guess.
Yeah, trying to make myself busy looking for part-time opportunities as well.
Okay. Well, hopefully you find a bunch that that fit your schedule and work out for you. So, thank you so much for taking the time today to talk about all your experiences. I think there's a lot of value in students hearing about the. I mean, I know we only talked about it right at the end there, but the value in just having those skills translate so easily from one field to another. Hopefully, you enjoy the rest of your summer before you're back with us for one more credit in the fall.
Yeah, summer is good. Sunshine is good outside.
Yes, it is. I'm going to go outside right now. So I will talk to you later, Senping.
Yep. Talk to you later.